Hello, everyone. Oops. Thank you for joining our Hangout with FoodCorps alums this evening or afternoon, wherever you might be. And thanks to the alums who have graciously volunteered their time to share their experiences with people who are thinking about applying to FoodCorps. My name is Tiffany McLean, and I'm the Recruitment and Alumni Manager at FoodCorps, based out of the Portland, Oregon office. Every year, with the help of our fellows, I help introduce this amazing opportunity to serve to new people and audiences throughout the country. And with the other hat that I wear, I identify opportunities to keep our alums connected to and invested in the work that we do. Oftentimes, it can feel like a juggling act, but hosting this panel is one of the times for me to bring my two distinct roles together. I answer the emails at serve@foodcorps.org, and a lot of our prospective candidates ask if they can be connected to a current service member or FoodCorps alum before they apply. And usually we'll connect you to one of our FoodCorps fellows. FoodCorps fellows are alums of the program who are serving as team leads and mentors and program administrators in one of the states that we are in. But this time, with the help of technology, we thought we'd give you an opportunity to hear from and ask questions of a panel of alums and to offer this opportunity to many people at once. FoodCorps is a relatively young organization. We're only in our 4th program year, so we don't have as many alums out in the world as some other programs do. But in my biased opinion, they are every bit as passionate, supportive, and inspiring as any other alumni group out there, and I'm excited to share them with you. So without further ado, let's begin our Q&A, starting with Daniel Chamberlain of Boston, Massachusetts. Daniel served with City Sprouts during the 2012-2013 service year and is now the garden coordinator and enrichment teacher at Boston Day and Evening Academy. Daniel, what led you to FoodCorps? What were you doing, and what was it about our mission that spoke to you?
Well, hello everyone. Good evening to some of you. And so I was already involved with an AmeriCorps affiliated nonprofit the year prior to my service with FoodCorps with a nonprofit called City Year. And I was lucky enough to serve in a K-8 school in Boston, and that experience really proved to me that education was something I wanted to do, and teaching was something I wanted to do full-time and explore as a career. And so when I heard about FoodCorps, it just seemed like this wonderful opportunity to practice, teaching and my love for farming and food, because prior to City Year, I'd been farming through the country and in Israel for about 3 years. And so this was just a wonderful combination of the two, and it just made sense. Is there anything else you wanted me to add to that, or anything
No,
I forgot?
thanks, Dan.
Okay.
For a minute. Let's turn toward the south with Liza Hudson, who served 2 years with the Cooperative Extension in Guilford County, North Carolina, and is still in the area working as a garden teacher at the Greensboro Montessori School. Eliza, what was your path to FoodCorps?
Well, I really started off in college studying biology, and I loved systems. I loved ecology and field studies, and I thought that I wanted to be a research scientist, but I really found that in my co-curricular studies as a service learning scholar, I was part of the Bonner program at my college, and then with my own personal passions in food and farming, I worked on several farms and was always cooking dinners for my family and for my friends. When I started to combine those interests, that interest in natural history I was studying in school, and then my interest in food and farming in a classroom that I was doing my service in, I really found something powerful and magical. And I had a friend who was doing an AmeriCorps service program in Harlan County, Kentucky, and that was the first year of FoodCorps, and she heard about it, and she told me, Eliza, you just got to check this thing out. This is perfect for you. It's kids, and it's food and farming and all these great things. And I did. And it really was the perfect storm of all of my interests and what I was looking for, and I didn't quite know it then, but what I was looking for professionally too. So it was the perfect thing for me to do over those 2 years that I was with you guys in Guilford County. I'm still here.
Thanks, Eliza. Now let's go all the way across the Pacific to Jane Lee, who is joining us from Hawaii. Jane was part of our first cohort of Hawaii service members last year, where she served at Kohala Elementary on the Big Island, and she's now working as the Food Ag Program Administrator at a new local nonprofit called Kohala Village Hub. Jane, would you mind sharing the aspects of your background that led you to FoodCorps?
Sure. It seems fitting to go right after Eliza because I also studied biology, and as I was thinking what I should do after I graduated, I dabbled a bit in research, and then I just kind of gave that up to work as a commercial baker. And I was about ready to go to pastry school in France, but something told me to visit my sister in Hawaii first. And so in Hawaii, I started farming and just linking the things that I really enjoyed doing. And so I think when I finally got a good clear picture in my head, I just Googled, I don't remember the exact words, but it was something like teaching kids nutrition and farming. And then FoodCorps popped up, and they were looking for a service member in my town that I had been living in for the previous year, in a very agricultural region of rural Big Island. And I just felt like that was the perfect, like, it was like destiny or something that I apply, and yeah, the rest is history, I suppose.
Thank you, Jane. And now we'll head back to another part of the South, to Sean Coder, currently of Fayetteville, Arkansas, where he served a year with the Fayetteville Public School District and is now working as an assistant farm manager for Cobblestone Farm. Sean, where were you before FoodCorps, and what brought you to us?
I was in Columbia, Missouri, where I went to college, but I wasn't immediately out of college. I was working as an AmeriCorps Vista for a local nonprofit there that I'd volunteered with a lot in college. And I really enjoyed working there, but I had FoodCorps on my mind since it started. I'd seen it and heard about it, and I thought, wow, that just seems like something that would be really perfect for me, somebody who really enjoys working with kids and exposing them to new and exciting things, but also healthy lifestyle. And I just love getting dirty, and I love playing out there with the kids. And so it was just kind of the perfect marriage of where I was at the time and where I wanted to go. And so it was really a good springboard to keep going further in my passions and interests, and just kind of disposition for having fun and teaching people and sharing that. So I was happy to go to Fayetteville, Arkansas, and do that, where I knew some people. And it's kind of the Ozarks, if you guys don't know that, and that's just a really beautiful place. When all the leaves were just falling off now, everything was just like spectacular. It just couldn't ask to be in a better place. So I grew up in Nebraska, and Arkansas seemed like this weird backwoods place, and now I love being in the backwoods and also having some city amenities at the same time. So don't shy away from Arkansas. It's a really fun place if you're considering it, or even if you're not. So.
Thanks for promoting Arkansas for us, Sean. And then last but definitely not least is Stephanie Simmons, originally from the Boston metro area, where she served for 2 years with the Food Project. But she's now living in Georgia, where she's serving as the FoodCorps Fellow for our first class of Georgia service members. Stephanie, why don't you bring it home for us? How was your path to FoodCorps, similar or different to the others on the panel?
Hi, Tiffany. I was actually homeschooling my son and back in school myself full time, really digging into the process of education and what it meant to me. And I spent my entire working career with young people. I taught preschool for 6 years, so I really had a passion for hands-on engagement and learning. And then I spent another 4 years after that as a youth care advocate with at-risk youth in a group home setting. And I had decided to take my son out of school and explore home learning with him. And during that time, I got really obsessed with the idea of gardening. We had bought tons of seed packets as part of our science exploration and seeded a ridiculous amount of starts that we couldn't do anything with because we were in a little apartment. We moved to a house with a yard and dug up half of it for a garden. I was teaching him how to cook from scratch for his science lessons, and I ended up taking a course called Exploring Your Small Farm Dream just to learn about how to do agriculture on a larger scale because I started to enjoy it so much. And I was following a farm in Worcester, Massachusetts that donates its harvest that it produces through volunteer labor when I stumbled on the FoodCorps application on their Facebook page entirely on a lark, and I clicked on it and got really excited about FoodCorps' mission, and the rest is my history for the past 2 years.
All right. Thanks to all of you for sharing. So I want to turn my attention to the people who might be listening out there in the world to know that there is a Q&A panel for you to ask questions if you'd like. I'll have the panel keep answering questions, but I also try to weave in your questions as we go, and this is your opportunity to ask a FoodCorps alum, so feel free. All right, so I'm just going to ask this question to the group, and whoever wants to jump in can. FoodCorps service members, they have a similar charge, but what that looks like on a day-to-day basis can vary. So I was just wondering if any of you would like to share what a typical day was like for you as a service member, and what may have been unique about your service experience when you compared it to others.
I can step up. So this is Sean. I don't know who's listening, if you can see videos or hear audio or whatever, but anyways, this is Sean from Arkansas again. And I was at 3 different middle schools, and we were trying to get the teachers to really utilize their school gardens, which were quite established in the Fayetteville public schools. So we were really trying to empower those teachers. So those 3 days that I spent in the schools, and the other 2 in our central office. And the 3 days I was in the schools, those 3 different schools, and each day I would, maybe just chat with teachers casually. Maybe I'd already set up a meeting with a specific teacher. Sometimes I would be in meetings with several teachers from one grade, was usually the most. And I would be talking with them or listening to what their plans were for the week and maybe for the semester. So you kind of have to find the right opportunities. I found that the semester planning meetings were best, and getting in there earlier is better so you can really get your face out there and talk to those teachers and see how you can fit into their schedule and help enhance their lessons was what it boiled down to for me. But really getting in there at the beginning as early as possible and getting to know people, even if you don't have your complete year plan set up, maybe come at least with something to offer and some examples of what you can offer. So do some brainstorming, do your homework. But once you get in those meetings, it's just a good chance to start to develop those relationships. And so anyways, as the year progressed, after some of those initial meetings, my day-to-day kind of ended up looking like coordinating with teachers, maybe working on some lesson plans myself, maybe just going in the cafeteria and being a presence there and hanging out with kids maybe. So it could be a lot of things really. And then other days in the office were very email heavy, and then there was also a lot of gardening. So just kind of all of that mixed in for me.
All right, thanks, Sean. Anyone else want to jump in?
I'll go. Um, I would say my service was kind of unique in that I wasn't directly stationed in a school setting. I did after school at the Boys and Girls Club in another organization, which gave me a lot of opportunity to be really hands-on and really free and explorative with the kind of activities we did. So I spent a lot of time taking care of really large garden at the Boys and Girls Club, and I was at a youth development organization that does youth development through Farming the Food Project. So I also got to engage with the youth there a lot and do some work on the land and in the greenhouse at the food project. There was a market for the youth, so I got to learn a lot about how that kind of program is structured. And I also worked with another service member at my site who was stationed in school. She taught third grade science, so I got to do a lot of brainstorming with her, and I got to support a lot of her classes. And there was a huge commercial kitchen in the food project office, so we got to teach a lot of lessons out of that, which was really exciting too.
Anyone else want to share?
I can jump in. I served at only one school, and I was there as pretty much the only garden person. So I was teaching and also coordinating, and I also launched the fresh fruits and vegetables snack distribution program. And so a lot of it was setting up systems. There was no water in the garden, so I remember hauling down coolers of water in the beginning of the year. So at the end of the year, we put in 500 feet of irrigation, and that was a whole community effort. But for me, a lot of it was setting up the systems, and it was a really wonderful learning experience on many levels, teaching, but also organizing projects, making budgets and sticking with them, learning how to integrate with the teachers and their curriculum. Yeah, just really great experiences.
So that's just a peek into the wide variety of service experiences our service members have. Would anyone like to share what you think is the most important thing you think a prospective applicant can do to prepare for FoodCorps?
I'd be happy to share. So I think, having served a year, and Stephanie, maybe you can share a bit more because this is your third year. Also, shout out, we actually were the first, when we started our service year, she was the first service member I collaborated with, so it's good to see you again, Stephanie. I would say to any prospective applicant is to do, Tiffany, what you suggested, is get in touch with the fellows at, in whichever state you really want to serve in, and speak with them about what it's like to be a service member, what the fellows' day is like, and if you can, if this is something that the service members are into and the fellows are into, even go and shadow a service member for a few hours or a day. I think that, that'll probably give you the best idea of what it's really like, because, we've all been there, and that's, if you are a service member, of course, that's a great way to get the experience, but if you can't, then definitely shadow someone. I think that's the best option.
Thanks, Daniel. Any other advice?
I could say something about the, I guess, sort of different demographic you might be serving if you're just moving somewhere for the first time. My advice would be to get to know that demographic as much as possible. If nothing else, you'll have a cultural understanding. Even if you think you're like from one state over, it's still different from town to town, state to state. And it was really helpful to know people already in the community, to know the farmers and to know the community organizers, um, because it's really those people are reaching out to you because they know and trust you, and it seems a lot more cohesive right at the get-go if you are able to form those contacts right away.
Thanks, Jane. Any other advice?
This is Eliza, and I'll speak up about ways to prepare. I think that for me, the best thing that I did before going into my service was to really do my research and know what the community was like as best as I could before I went, to know what my host site and my service sites were like, where they came from, what their purpose in the communities and within the state of North Carolina were, and really did some research too with the past service members that had been there in my site. So I mean, some folks have already spoken to that earlier, but I really felt like doing that specific research was what made a huge difference for me. And then going into it with a really great serving of humility. So yeah, that's what I would say. Do your research and then walk forth humbly.
Well, we have a related question from one of our audience members, Alex Sinner. Alex asks, what were challenges to earning trust in your relationships with the professionals, food service directors, teachers, etc., at your service site? They ask because other FoodCorps alums, this person has obviously already spoken with some FoodCorps alums, have said that this aspect of their work was crucial to develop. Did you all face any challenges?
Oh, yeah.
I would say just that they're so busy. Their time is extremely valuable. And if you come in super gung-ho and full of ideas and just kind of dump all your thoughts on them, you're going to get a glazed over kind of expression probably pretty quickly. So what's always been helpful to me is to figure out how I can help the first question I ask. And the first thing that I do is to figure out how I can be a resource and try to find out what it is they need, what aspirations they have for any garden programming they have, or what FoodCorps' mission is intersects with their goals as a school or as a site. And I think that's like a great way to make headway with people, is just to kind of figure out what they need before you kind of express what it is you want to do or what you expect out of your presence there.
I would say, too, to add on to that in order to even know, in my case, what my food service director needed, I had to understand what their job was like and how much pressure they were under. These guys get phone calls from parents, from all kinds of other food reps, and you name it. They're getting phone calls and being asked to give of their time and attention, and they try to make everybody happy, right? So understanding the amount of pressure that they were under really helped me just take a step back and think, okay, where do I fit in this? Where does all of this fit together? And is there anything I can do to help with that? And it turns out there was, but yeah.
Thanks for that.
I would add too, to be aware of your level of commitment that you can give to every situation as much as possible. It's really easy to overpromise yourself if you have a lot of projects going on, which was my case. And so as I went along, teachers get busy too over the year if you're working in schools, so they might be really into something at first too, and then have to say, oh, I can't do as much as that. And so just be aware of your ability to commit to certain projects and other people's abilities, and aim for the stars for sure. But definitely, I think the humility with Eliza's earlier comment rings true in this situation too. Just don't promise to be a superstar, but promise to put your effort forth as best as possible and to do good work together. And yeah, so commitment, awareness.
Yeah, Sean, I would definitely second what you say, and Jane, to go off what you said earlier about working in a community that is maybe new to you or not very familiar. I would highly recommend just to be a listening ear to start. And this is something that during my food core orientation, I forget who it was, but this was something that was communicated very strongly to all of us, was to not, Eliza, I think maybe you said, not specifically going with an agenda, or try to push an agenda, but going with an objective, but listen to the needs of the community and the people that you're working with, and really fit your service to their needs. And that's true of really all community work. That's one of the basic tenets of doing community work well.
Thanks to Alex for that great question, and thanks to all of you for your wonderful answers. I'll move on to another question, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but how did you all decide which state or site you wanted to apply to serve with, and what advice would you give future candidates about selecting where to serve?
Right. I chose Fayetteville because I knew some people there, and like I said earlier, I heard the Ozarks were really beautiful. Um, I put Hawaii down as my third choice, even though I wanted to put it as my first, because I didn't know if it was going to be a site that would get the funding that year. It was kind of, they weren't sure yet at that point, so I really wanted to be sure to secure a position because I really wanted to work with FoodCorps. But so I wouldn't tell you not to put a site that you really want to be in, but also I think it's good to be working in a community that you're already a part of. So if you're in a community that has FoodCorps, I highly recommend that you have a head start.
Thanks, Sean. Anyone else?
I think what Eliza said about doing research about the sites is a great idea, to take a look and see what they do. I served in Boston because that was my home, and I was excited to see FoodCorps come there and excited to see what they were doing. But also, I was really excited about the food project when I read about their work, to be able to be a part of that and to learn from their model that has spread all over the country in their 20 years of work. So I think to choose a host site and service sites that you're excited about being a part of.
Yeah, I chose to serve in North Carolina because that's where I'm from. And similar to Stephanie, I was just super excited about all the great energy and just all these energies that were converging all over the state. And I knew that there was a lot of farm to school work going on in North Carolina, but I looked at FoodCorps as an opportunity to really delve in and be a part of that in a way that was different from what was already going on, but also had the opportunity to really bridge um, a lot of those a lot of those initiatives that were going on, and it did. That's really why the folks that brought FoodCorps to North Carolina did it. There were a lot of different projects and pockets of interest and enthusiasm around farm to school and school gardens, but really they wanted something to bring it all together. So I knew I wanted to be in North Carolina for a lot of reasons, and it was a good decision.
All right. Go ahead, Dave.
So my story mirrors Eliza's like really well. Ironically, I moved from North Carolina to Hawaii, but in the year that I spent on Big Island in this small rural community, I began to really understand their community development plan goal that they set a few years ago of reaching 50% food self-sufficiency for our district. And I just really wanted to know how I could plug into that. And so this bring my connections that I had and then build more. And it really bridged well over into this position that I am currently holding, trying to build an actual food hub, physical location, still in the same community. And I probably wouldn't have been inspired had the community not already set this goal. And yeah, that's how I picked wine.
All right. I just want to remind the audience that you are free to ask questions as well. So I'm monitoring the Q&A box, and again, I will try to get our panelists to answer your questions if you have any. I want to turn to a practical question about living on the FoodCorps stipend and how you manage that. Our stipend currently is $17,500. Which is modest, and it can be more challenging to live on some communities than others. And I'm sure our audience would be interested in learning how you manage to keep a balanced budget.
I'd like to speak to that. So last year we had a stipend of 15,000, and I know I've been vocal about it, but the cost of living in some areas like DC, Hawaii, even California is just much more expensive than other places in the States. But this it didn't stop me, but it made it a lot more stressful, to be perfectly honest. And I spent a lot of time and energy and kind of trying to find a place to live. And I moved every few months, and because I couldn't afford to stay at the place I was living, or it was uncomfortable. So I relied a lot on friends, and it's just like that in the region that I live. It's just really expensive. So my parents actually gave me money to buy a car, and some places you do need a car, and this was one of them. And I couldn't do my job without it, unfortunately. So I'm very grateful, and I plan on paying them back when I make buku bucks.
Anyone else want to
Yes,
add
sure.
on to that?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. So again, I served in Boston, and luckily here there's the cost of living is quite expensive, but there is a pretty good public transportation system, so that helped me out and helped me to cut some costs there. Certainly the stipend it can be harder to live on depending on where you live, Jane, like what you said. And you're certainly, you don't join AmeriCorps, FoodCorps in particular, to make a quick buck. That's certainly not what it was about for me. And so, although I had to live on the stipend, it wasn't what I joined FoodCorps for. That being said, one of the ways that I was able to save some money and stay afloat was really just cooking a lot with my friends and making home cooked meals, because I love eating out when I can, and avoiding cooking when I can, to be perfectly honest. But that was a great way to save some money, and on top of that, practice recipes that I wanted to practice with the youth that I was working with. So it was, not only a way to save money, but a great excuse to actually try out some recipes like, baking kale, which I'd never had before, and just trying that at home and tweaking the recipe and seeing what would be most appealing to the students I worked with.
Thanks, Daniel. Anyone else want to chime in?
I was lucky enough to qualify for food stamps, and that's really how I made it work. I already cooked a lot for myself, which is a great way to save money, like Daniel said, but groceries are really expensive. Food costs are super expensive, as we're all pretty much, or I would hope that we're all pretty aware of. So that was partly how I made it work. And I always had roommates, or tried to find a place where I could share in living expenses with other people. And that's more difficult for others, I'm sure. And depending on the place you're in, like if you're in a rural setting, that's going to be, it could be a little bit trickier. And my site was in an urban area, so it wasn't as tricky for me. It was a college area. So food stamps and roommates, and that's pretty much it, I think. Yeah.
All right. And I've got a question that might be one for me, from Anthony Yu, who wants to know, does location preference affect acceptance? If you would make a good FoodCorps member, but your preferences don't align with FoodCorps demands, would you be placed at another location or just turned down? So to a certain extent, Anthony, it can affect your acceptance. We publish our acceptance rates on our website, so you know which states are, most or least competitive in terms of slots available versus number of people who apply to serve in that state. So that's a good place to start. But we do also shuffle candidates. So on the application, we give you an opportunity to identify a first, second, or third choice state. And depending on the needs of the state and the quality of your application, we could send your application to a state that is not your first choice, which could increase your chances of being selected regardless. So it's an interesting calculus. You definitely want to do your research and serve where you want to be and where you can afford to be, and at the same time, you have to kind of think about where you have the highest chance of being accepted if being a FoodCorps service member is your highest priority. So that is kind of the process, and ultimately your application, though, is only initially sent to one state. It will be either your first, second, or third choice. Let's move on to another question. What do you think has been the biggest benefit of your FoodCorps experience so far? What have you taken with you, and or how does it help you in the work that you're doing now?
I can start.
Okay.
It's a huge question. There's just things we could talk at length about. But in some, I think that relationships, whether it be with students or with your coworkers at school or the nonprofit, for me, a lot of it was the relationships that really made it all worth it. And the other aspect is character building. And you always hear character building with kind of like negative connotation, like a euphemism almost, but it is truly just has boosted my maturity and confidence, and I would not be the same person without this experience. It was a really great learning curve, and learned a lot of humbleness, and still working on the whole patience thing too. So definitely still a work in progress, but it definitely helps.
Thank you, Jane.
I'd say that I've been working with youth for the past 4 years. So as much as I'd like to say that the biggest thing I got from my service was the experience to work with youth, but because that it was only a year of my time within the education field, the biggest thing I got from it was the professional network that I, accumulated throughout my service, just because it was a necessity for me, to best serve the youth that I worked with, to really reach out to as many different people as I could, whether it be people in the field of policy, or urban farmers, or organizations that were willing to take my youth out to the country and on field trips to local farms. That's something that's really stuck with me, and I've really benefited from post FoodCorps, because had I not had that or built that network during my service, I certainly don't think I would have had the professional opportunities that I got, or even landed the jobs that I got after my service, had it not been for FoodCorps. And just another point about that, I'm looking to go back to school now, and the network, my local network, but also the larger FoodCorps network of alums. I sent an email out to everybody asking them if they had any connections to the schools I was interested in, and have gotten some wonderful feedback from them. And people have, and the alums, fellow alums, and also my personal network have really connected me with some great people. So that's the greatest thing I got from my service, really, was the professional network.
Glad to hear that, Daniel. Anyone else want to jump in here?
Yeah, I can. I think inspiration, really, I mean, maybe it's not so tangible all the time, but inspiration, almost being intangible is almost even better. It's something you can carry with you as you keep going, and you see a lot of dead ends, maybe, as you kind of follow paths that you think may or may not work. So I go forward and with hope for the future. And maybe that sounds a little corny and cliche, but really just seeing a lot of volunteers we worked with come in from the University of Arkansas, and their passion and what they wanted to do for the kids in the schools, to help really improve nutrition and get kids inspired to be healthy, and to see that as a positive thing, not as a burden. So a lot of our volunteers, and also just teachers and their dedication. A lot of people might come to FoodCorps out of college. It seems that's a pretty common experience, and just to see a community past your university that you may have been involved in, just really trying to all come together to make something like FoodCorps and good nutrition, and tripping over my words, but basically just to see everyone come together as a community effort was really inspiring, and just to see everyone's individual efforts is inspiring in a multitude of ways still right now. So.
All right. Anyone else want to chime in?
I would say a lot of really cool hands-on experiences that I don't think I would have easily had the opportunity to have otherwise, all crammed into a couple of years' time, from being able to get behind the scenes looks at how a greenhouse operates and working in a greenhouse versus how an urban farm operates, getting to collaborate with people as diverse as chefs and farmers and urban master gardeners and teachers, just a really wide variety of behind the scenes looks at how different things operate, and hands-on experience actually working in those different environments. It's really better than being able to read about something or watch a documentary. To be in it in so many different capacities is really unforgettable, and you leave with a lot of a skill set that you didn't start with.
All right, we have one more question from the audience, going back to our stipend conversation. Just wondering if any of you had small part-time jobs.
I can go first.
I can tell you no. Oh, sorry.
Oh no. Okay, I'll just jump in. I did not really have a real part-time job, but I did play music at the local cafe, and that was really fun. And I also did a talent show, not talent show, a fundraiser with for the school garden, and I made a lot more money that way than just for myself.
I didn't have time to, but I served with people who worked with caterers, doing table service, and did some restaurant work and things that had flexible schedules like that.
Okay. Food court, just so the audience knows, you are allowed to have part-time jobs, but as Stephanie has indicated, food court is a full-time commitment, 36-ish plus hours a week. So the kind of jobs that our service members tend to have are the kind that have flexible schedules that they can work around. So those sort of one-off or occasional catering positions, or waitress waiter positions at restaurants that are not in conflict with school hours, which is when most of our service members have to be available.
Another interesting opportunity now in Atlanta, it's really easy for anybody with a garden to sell their produce without a license. So I have one service member who has a big community garden space, and she's selling some produce to her some of her chef friends, and I don't know how well that's going for her financially, but maybe somewhere you serve, if you find somewhere with an ordinance like that, that could be a thought.
Sean, were you gonna add something?
Oh yeah, I remember that I did some dog sitting, and so anything like that. Maybe do some weeding for friend of a friend, or those side jobs that you can always get if you just kind of ask around. So actually, the dog sitting was through my boss, so she put me in contact. So maybe even just let your site coordinator know you're looking for some part-time work and see if they know anyone.
I would also add that once the word gets out that you know how to grow food, or how to cook it and can work with kids, there's usually a good deal of people who want you to come present and talk about what you do, and teach others about what you do. Actually, Stephanie and I, we did a workshop for NOFA, Massachusetts. Was that it, Stephanie? I think it was NOFA, right?
Yep.
Yeah, on urban gardening, and we actually did that in exchange for admittance into the NOFA Massachusetts Winter Conference. So if that's something you want to do, certainly, but there's certainly money out there and people who are interested to hire you to talk about urban farming, at least from my experience.
Daniel, that's really funny that you mentioned that too, because I did that as an alum. So those opportunities don't go away. You can totally barter based off of your experience.
All right. Thank you all for your great advice and sharing your experiences. Have one question. It's a response from a service member who is listening in and says that he runs quite a few programs, but oh no, this is a service member who wants advice from you. He runs quite a few programs, but he's still feeling crazy at the office. What are some ways you all engaged in active service outside of teaching leadership hours?
I was lucky to work at an organization that had a farm and a greenhouse, so I could easily slip away to help out in those settings, and it was always welcome. If I needed to get out of my desk and get out of my chair, and also helping to coordinate some field trips for my site was another way to keep it kind of busy if there was an overabundance of office time.
Anyone else want to chime in with that? A response for that question?
Go ahead.
Jane, you go ahead. I already spoke, so.
I was just going to add something I wish I had done more is shadow farmers in the area, and they were more than willing to help show me, whatever I wanted in a day, and help out on farms that way, and it's training.
Okay, well, as we are nearing our the end of our time together, I just wanted to open up to our panelists if they had any final words of wisdom that they haven't been able to share that they'd like to share with the audience. I invite you to do it now.
Sure. Something that I've thought a lot about, going into my service and applying for FoodCorps, but also a lot afterwards, was that FoodCorps was unique, I think, and stood out from a lot of AmeriCorps programs that I not only applied to, but knew other people and had friends who were a part of. And the biggest thing that set FoodCorps apart was that the staff of FoodCorps really just provides, at least from my experience, provided a tremendous amount of support, and there's a tremendous sense of camaraderie, not only between the service members that you work directly with, but all the service members throughout the nation, and also the staff at FoodCorps. And that was something that was really unique and quite heartwarming and uplifting at the toughest times. So that's what I really appreciated and continue to appreciate about FoodCorps.
Thanks, Daniel. John?
Oh, did you say Sean?
Well, I thought you were about to weigh in because your video popped up.
Oh yeah, just very mobile, very movable person. I don't know. I guess my thought that was kind of chewing on there for a second was just balance. Yeah, I think there's definitely a great network to connect to, and I wish I would have taken more advantage of that during the year. And I'm really thankful for all of the communication I get as an alum from you guys still. So that's great. But I'd say yeah, as you're approaching it, definitely keep yourself in mind and balance yourself, and because if you want to be that superstar, or that's a bad word. I don't think you should be a superstar. You should be a great team player. But if you want to do a lot, you have to have the energy to do a lot. So get some sleep and make sure that you take care of yourself on your off hours, so that on your on hours you really can be on. Dad?
Right.
I'd just like to
Go ahead.
add on to what Daniel said. FoodCorps you're in good hands, and you're among really amazing people, and I just really appreciate that about the nonprofit, that it was just really conscious and smart. Everybody is awesome.
I feel like we should end it on that note. Everybody's awesome. I want to thank you all again for joining us, and thank you to Daniel, Eliza, Jane, Sean, and Stephanie for sharing your stories and experiences and advice with us. This hangout is recorded and will be available on our YouTube station and website. And so feel free, once it's up, to share this with anyone you think might be interested in FoodCorps. And if you have any additional questions, please feel free to email us at serve@foodcorps.org. Have a happy holiday season. Next year's application will launch January 9th, and mark your calendars. And we look forward to reading your applications. Have a good evening.
Good night. It was good to see you, Dan. Jane.
See you, Stephanie.